Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purple Elephant YouTube channel. How are you today? Today we're going to talk about workplace horror story number two. As I said, I have so many of them. So this one is the case of the supervisor who was obsessed with my mother, who wasn't an employee, by the way. So let's get into it. All right, so this one started out dangerously good. It was one of these jobs where everyone actually liked each other. My coworkers, they were awesome. They were funny. My supervisor was really cool. Nobody really stressed about anything. Nobody was sending passive aggressive emails or anything. The workplace was actually really fun to go to. And, life was good. Life was peaceful. Life at that job was suspiciously stable. And honestly, that probably should have been my first clue that something could change just like that. Um, One thing that I've learned about workplaces is that culture isn't what's written on the wall, it's who's leading the room. And, well, the room got new leaders. And when that happened, everything crumbled. People started leaving. And my favorite coworkers, they found new opportunities. And, my boss got transferred, the one that I originally had that was really great. And so they brought in a new supervisor and then a new managing director. So you had two new people. Um, and the issue is that they just brought in enough emotional chaos to power a small city, and the energy shifted immediately. So, when someone walks into a workplace and then within 3 business days, everyone develops a stress twitch, that's exactly what happened. So, let's first talk about the managing director because this man developed a fascinating hobby. And that hobby was he was obsessed with my mother. And let's just get something straight. My mom did not work there. She had never worked there. And she had no business relationship with the company at all. Yet somehow she kept becoming this recurring character in this man's personal workplace universe. So every conversation I would have with him, he would be like, "Well, what does your mother think about that? What is your mother like? Your mother sounds like she's wonderful. I wish that she was my mother. Do you think your mother would ever stop by? I would love to spend time with her and take her out to lunch." Like, sir, why are we holding quarterly strategic review sessions on my mother's existence? So at first I just thought, okay, maybe he's socially awkward. And so I wanted to give him grace. And I wanted to believe that this was just an unfortunate conversational habit that was going on. And then it kept happening and happening and happening. And at one point, I started wondering if my mother was secretly on payroll. And then while he was conducting this unauthorized research project on my family tree, the supervisor now, so this is different, managing director, obsessed with my mother, the supervisor, well, he became obsessed with one of my female coworkers. And by obsessed, I mean he kept asking her out repeatedly and frequently and with a level of persistence that is usually normally reserved for telemarketers. The telemarketers, they'll call you from sun up to sun down, or gym membership salespeople. That's how persistent he was. Now, my coworker, she was incredibly professional. She was very polite. She was very clear, very uninterested. Yet somehow every no thank you was interpreted as, okay, well, I'll ask again next Tuesday. And so this is where things got weird because, as we know, workplace dysfunction doesn't just happen in isolation. everybody starts to feel it, right? So people start exchanging looks and people start whispering and people start developing entire conversations through like eye contact alone. And so meetings became less about work and more about collective emotional surveillance, and everyone's trying to figure out like what mood are we dealing with today? Is today a normal day? Are we safe? Do I need to prepare emotionally before asking a question? And so here's the thing that leadership often miss: people don't leave because they're tired of their jobs. I mean, people leave because they're tired of managing someone else's instability. And so once leadership becomes emotionally unpredictable, employees end up they stop focusing on work and they start focusing on what is leadership doing today? How are they acting today? And so then employees start monitoring moods and reactions and tones and body language, trying to predict the weather patterns of someone else's emotions. And that's absolutely exhausting. And so the wild part is that on paper, everything looked fine, right? Nobody was screaming at each other and nobody was like throwing up its furniture and wrestling behind the copier. But if HR, walked through, they probably would have been like, oh, everything looks great. But emotionally, the workplace just did not feel safe anymore. And that just changes everything. And so that's exactly what I work on, and that's what I talk about when I say naming the purple elephant, because organizations think dysfunction only counts when things become dramatic, when sometimes it's quiet, but it's like a quiet loud. And so when HR gets involved, or when chaos becomes visible, sometimes that's you're like, okay, I can see it, but sometimes dysfunction can also just look like an entire team just quietly carrying tension while pretending everything is normal. So sometimes the purple elephant is sitting right in the middle of the office and it's wearing a nice name badge and it's approving time off requests and it's like, hey, I'm the purple elephant. Are you going to name me? But this experience taught me something that I'll never forget. Taught me that a healthy culture is surprisingly fragile. So you can spend years building trust and building relationships and building psychological safety. And then one emotionally unstable leader can alter the climate faster than a thermostat with anger issues. And so that's how powerful leadership energy actually is. And so the moral of this workplace horror story is that if your managing director is more invested in your mother's personal life, and if your supervisor is invested in your coworkers' dating prospects more so than they are leading the organization, it might be time to dust off that resume. And if you have ever watched one leadership change completely destroy a great workplace culture, please tell me I'm not alone because I know that all of you have stories. I have so many more. Actually, just even trying to think about them. Um, it's so many that I'm just trying to think of them one by one. Also, too, I am going to sneak in some workplace horror stories of things that I did because nobody's perfect, right? So I also was been a supervisor, I've been a director, I've been an executive director. So I've had my own leadership challenges as well. So maybe the next video that I will do, I'll talk about my workplace horror stories of things that I did that I learned from. So yeah, that's workplace horror story number two. Still to this day, I find it hilarious. I'll mention to my mom, hey, remember that supervisor that was like weirdly obsessed with you? So yeah, again, like I said, it wasn't that anything was going on where it looked immediately bad, but underneath it, people were really uncomfortable. And so when we think about that and we think about, healthy culture and how we want to cultivate healthy culture, it's really important for us to, as I always say, mirror the culture that we want, right? So if we want teams that are stable, well, you got to be a stable leader. If you want teams that are able to, do things on their own without coming to you all the time, well, you've got to be the type of leader that's like, well, I'm not going to micromanage. I'm going to allow my team to do things on their own. A lot of people, a lot of leaders talk about healthy culture, but unfortunately, not a lot of leaders actually really know what healthy culture is. And so there's always room for development and there's always room, for learning. And that's what I'm here for. All right. So I will see you in the next video.